Jake Rice stepped onto the gleaming surface of the Norcadian homeworld, acutely aware of the disdainful glances from the alien diplomats surrounding him. Their elongated bodies and iridescent skin made them appear otherworldly, but it was their attitudes that truly set them apart. As Earth's chosen representative, Jake knew the weight of humanity's future rested on his shoulders. A tall, slender Norcadian approached, her movements fluid and graceful. "I am Odin, assigned to study your biology," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Welcome to our world, primitive." Jake bristled at the insult, but maintained his composure. He had expected this reception, given the Norcadians' reputation for technological superiority and their dismissive view of humanity. The peace negotiations ahead would be crucial, and he couldn't afford to let personal slights derail the mission. As they walked towards the grand hall for the welcoming ceremony, Odin continued her verbal assault. "It's remarkable that your species managed interstellar travel at all. Tell me, do you still use combustion engines?" Jake bit back a retort, focusing instead on the towering spires and floating platforms that dotted the Norcadian cityscape. The advanced architecture only served to highlight the vast technological gap between their civilizations. The welcoming ceremony was a lavish affair, with holographic displays showcasing Norcadian achievements. As Jake stood before the High Council, Odin couldn't resist one final jab. "Esteemed Council, I present to you the human diplomat. Let us hope he's evolved beyond flinging his own feces." The chamber erupted in laughter, and something inside Jake snapped. He stepped forward, his voice ringing out clear and strong. "I challenge you, Odin, and any other Norcadian who doubts humanity's worth. Put us to the test. Strength, agility, intelligence. Let's see who truly deserves the title of primitive." A hush fell over the assembly. The High Council members exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of amusement and intrigue. After a moment of deliberation, the lead counselor spoke. "We accept your challenge, human. It will provide an excellent opportunity to demonstrate Norcadian superiority." Over the next few days, Jake found himself subjected to a battery of tests. He struggled initially, his human physiology seemingly no match for Norcadian capabilities. Odin watched with smug satisfaction as Jake faltered in trials of strength and agility. But as the challenges progressed, something changed. Jake began to show unexpected prowess, particularly in tests of endurance and adaptability. He pushed through pain barriers that left his Norcadian opponents gasping and devised creative solutions to problems that stumped their rigid thinking. Odin's smugness gave way to curiosity. She approached the High Council with a request. "I wish to conduct a thorough biological examination of the human. There may be aspects of their physiology we have overlooked." The council agreed, seeing it as an opportunity to uncover the secrets behind Jake's surprising performance. When Odin presented her request to Jake, he hesitated. The idea of being poked and prodded by alien scientists was far from appealing, but he recognized the potential diplomatic value. "Fine," he agreed reluctantly. "But remember, Odin, you might find more than you bargained for. We humans are full of surprises." As Odin began her examination, her eyes widened with each new discovery. The complexity of human anatomy, the intricacies of their adaptive immune system, and most surprisingly, the unique aspects of human reproductive biology left her astounded. "This is unexpected," Odin murmured, her earlier condescension replaced by genuine fascination. "Your species possesses qualities we had not anticipated." Jake allowed himself a small smile. The tide was turning, and with it, the future of human-Norcadian relations hung in the balance. As word of his performances and Odin's findings spread, the once unified Norcadian front began to fracture. Some advocated for closer ties with humanity, while others pushed for isolation or even preemptive action against Earth. With the remaining trials looming and tensions rising among the Norcadian populace, Jake knew that every action, every word, and every revelation about human capabilities would shape humanity's place in the galactic community. The stakes had never been higher, and Jake Rice, diplomat turned reluctant champion, stood at the center of it all. As word of Jake's performances and Odin's findings spread, the once unified Norcadian front began to fracture. Some advocated for closer ties with humanity, while others pushed for isolation or even preemptive action against Earth. With the remaining trials looming and tensions rising among the Norcadian populace, Jake knew that every action, every word, and every revelation about human capabilities would shape humanity's place in the galactic community. Odin's fascination with human physiology deepened as she continued her examination of Jake. Her eyes widened with each new discovery, her earlier condescension replaced by genuine scientific curiosity. "Your endocrine system is remarkably adaptive," she murmured, studying a holographic display of Jake's hormonal responses. "It allows for rapid adjustments to stress and environmental changes." Jake lay on the examination table, watching Odin's expressions shift from surprise to intrigue. "We humans have always been good at adapting," he said, a hint of pride in his voice. "It's how we've survived on Earth for so long." Odin nodded, her slender fingers manipulating the holographic controls. "And your reproductive system? It's fascinating. The efficiency and versatility are unlike anything we've seen in other species." Jake felt a flush creep up his neck, but he maintained his composure. "Well, we do take pride in that particular aspect of our biology." As the examination progressed, Odin pushed Jake through a series of physical tests designed to explore the limits of human endurance. Jake found himself running on a gravity-adjusted treadmill, lifting increasingly heavy weights and navigating complex obstacle courses. To both their surprise, Jake's performance exceeded all expectations. His recovery times between tests were remarkably short, and he displayed levels of stamina that left the observing Norcadian scientists muttering in disbelief. After a particularly grueling endurance test, Jake sat catching his breath as Odin approached with a hydration pack. "Your resilience is impressive," she said, her tone softer than before. "I must admit I'm beginning to reassess my initial judgments about humans." Jake accepted the pack gratefully. "Maybe we're not so primitive after all," he said with a wry smile. As the days passed, Jake and Odin spent more time together, their conversations extending beyond the realm of scientific inquiry. They discussed their respective cultures, sharing stories of their homeworlds and personal experiences. "Tell me about Earth," Odin asked one evening as they walked through a bioluminescent garden. "What is it like to live on a planet with such diverse ecosystems?" Jake's eyes lit up as he described Earth's varied landscapes, from towering mountains to vast oceans, lush rainforests to arid deserts. Odin listened intently, her iridescent skin shimmering in the soft glow of the surrounding plants. "It sounds beautiful," she said softly. "Perhaps one day I could visit and see it for myself." Their growing rapport did not go unnoticed. Jake's human colleagues sent him encrypted messages, warning him about becoming too close to Odin. "Remember your mission, Rice," one message read. "Don't let personal feelings compromise our diplomatic goals." Similarly, Odin faced criticism from her peers. Walking through the research facility one day, she overheard two fellow scientists speaking in hushed tones. "Odin's getting too close to the human," one said. "She's losing objectivity. It's a betrayal of our species' interests." Odin quickened her pace, her heart racing. She knew they were right to be concerned, but she couldn't deny the connection she felt with Jake. Meanwhile, news of Jake's impressive performance in the trials spread like wildfire through the Norcadian population. Crowds gathered in public squares, debating the implications of human capabilities. "If they're this adaptable, imagine what we could learn from them," one excited Norcadian exclaimed. "Or what threat they could pose," another countered darkly. "We should isolate ourselves before it's too late." The High Council, alarmed by the growing positive sentiment towards humans, convened an emergency session. The lead counselor's voice echoed through the chamber. "We must reassert our superiority, prepare new trials, ones that will expose the humans' weaknesses once and for all." As Jake prepared for these new challenges, he sought Odin's help in understanding Norcadian technology and thought processes. They met in secret, away from prying eyes and ears. "The Council is introducing tests of advanced technology and complex problem-solving," Odin explained, her voice low. "They're designed to exploit what they perceive as human weaknesses." Jake nodded, his brow furrowed in concentration. Can you help me understand your technology better? I need to be prepared. Odin hesitated, knowing that assisting Jake could jeopardize her career. But as she looked into his eyes, she made her decision. Yes, I'll help you. Over the next few days, they worked tirelessly together. Odin introduced Jake to Norcadian computational systems, explaining the underlying principles of their quantum processors. Jake absorbed the information quickly, his adaptability once again shining through. As they worked, the air between them grew charged with unspoken tension. Their hands brushed as they manipulated holographic displays, and their eyes lingered on each other longer than necessary. Both felt the growing attraction, but hesitated to acknowledge it, aware of the potential consequences. The day before the new trials were set to begin, protests erupted across the Norcadian capital. Supporters of human Norcadian cooperation clashed with those advocating for isolation. The streets filled with the glow of energy shields and the shouts of demonstrators. From the window of his quarters, Jake watched the chaos unfold. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him like a physical force. He knew that his performance in the upcoming trials would have far-reaching consequences for both species. A soft chime announced a visitor. The door slid open to reveal Odin, her expression a mix of concern and perseverance. Jake, she said, stepping into the room, are you ready for tomorrow? He turned to face her, acutely aware of the short distance between them. As ready as I'll ever be, he replied, managing a small smile. Odin moved closer, her iridescent skin shimmering in the low light. Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know that working with you has changed me, changed how I see humans, how I see you. Jake's heart raced as he looked into Odin's otherworldly eyes. He knew that the future of human-Norcadian relations hung in the balance, but in that moment, all he could think about was the alien woman standing before him. As the sounds of the protests echoed from the streets below, Jake and Odin stood on the precipice of a decision that could alter the course of both their lives and the future of their species. Species. Jake took a deep breath, steadying himself for what lay ahead. The moment was interrupted by another chime from the door. Enter, Jake called out, his eyes still locked with Odin's. The door slid open to reveal Tarek, Jake's human supervisor. His expression hardened as he took in the scene before him. Rice, a word, Tarek said, his tone clipped. Alone. Odin stepped back, her iridescent skin flickering with what Jake now recognized as embarrassment. I should go, she said softly. Good luck tomorrow, Jake. As Odin left, Tarek fixed Jake with a stern look. You're getting too close, Rice. Remember why you're here. Jake nodded, his heart made. I haven't forgotten our mission, sir. See that you don't, Tarek replied. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be the true test. As the door closed behind Tarek, Jake turned back to the window, watching the protest below. The weight of two worlds rested on his shoulders. The next morning, Jake stood before a panel of Norcadian officials, his heart racing beneath a calm exterior. The lead counselor's voice rang out, echoing through the chamber. Today we will test the limits of human capability, she announced. Let the trials begin. The first challenge thrust Jake into a virtual cockpit of a Norcadian starship. Holographic displays flickered to life around him, alien symbols and controls surrounding him on all sides. Navigate through the Pelleran Nebula, the instructor's voice commanded. You have 10 minutes. Jake's fingers hovered over the unfamiliar controls. He closed his eyes, recalling Odin's lessons on Norcadian computational systems. With a deep breath, he began to work. His initial movements were clumsy, the ship lurching in the simulation. Murmurs of satisfaction rippled through the observing Norcadians. But as the minutes ticked by, Jake's movements became more assured. He found patterns in the seemingly chaotic interface, his mind adapting to the alien logic. As the final seconds counted down, Jake guided the virtual ship through a particularly dense cluster of stellar matter. The simulation ended with a soft chime, and Jake looked up to see surprised expressions on the faces of his examiners. Impressive, one muttered, looking down at her datapad. He completed the course in 9 minutes and 47 seconds. The second trial proved even more challenging. Jake found himself in a room filled with shifting, holographic puzzles and strategic simulations. Each problem seemed designed to confound human logic, to push the boundaries of his problem-solving abilities. Jake approached each challenge methodically, his brow furrowed in concentration. He manipulated energy fields to solve three-dimensional puzzles, deciphered complex alien languages to break codes, and outmaneuvered simulated opponents in games of strategy. As he worked, Jake noticed a shift in the atmosphere of the room. The initial smugness of the Norcadian observers gave way to looks of surprise, then grudging respect. By the time he completed the final simulation, a hush had fallen over the chamber. During a brief recess, Jake made his way to a refreshment station, his mind still reeling from the intensity of the trials. As he reached for a hydration pack, a tall Norcadian blocked his path. "Zarin," Jake said, recognizing the military official who had been vocal in his opposition to human Norcadian relations. Zarin's eyes narrowed. "You may have impressed some with your parlor tricks, human, but do not think for a moment that you've won." "This isn't about winning," Jake replied evenly. "It's about understanding each other." Zarin leaned in close, his voice low and threatening. "Understand this. If your kind becomes a threat, we will not hesitate to eliminate it. Your planet would make a fine colony for our empire." Before Jake could respond, Zarin turned and strode away, leaving Jake with a cold knot of fear in his stomach. As Jake prepared for the final trial, he felt a familiar presence at his side. Odin had managed to slip away from her duties to offer a few last words of advice. "Remember," she whispered, her breath warm against his ear, "Norcadian diplomacy values strength, but also subtlety. Show them both." Jake nodded, acutely aware of her closeness. For a moment, the chaos around them faded away, and he found himself lost in her otherworldly eyes. Without thinking, he reached out, his fingers brushing against her iridescent skin. The contact sent a jolt through both of them. Odin's skin flickered with a cascade of colors, and Jake felt a warmth spread through his body. For a heartbeat, they stood frozen, the air between them charged with unspoken emotions. The moment was shattered by the arrival of Tarek. His eyes narrowed as he took in the scene before him. "Rice," he said sharply, "it's time." Jake reluctantly stepped away from Odin, his mind racing. He had a mission to complete, but the feelings stirring within him couldn't be ignored. As he walked towards the final trial chamber, he knew that more than just human Norcadian relations hung in the balance. The final trial took place in a vast holographic chamber. Jake found himself standing before a simulated delegation of a hostile alien species, their features grotesque and threatening. The lead counselor's voice echoed through the room. "Negotiate a peace treaty," she commanded. "Failure will result in simulated war." Jake took a deep breath, recalling everything he had learned about Norcadian diplomacy and interstellar politics. He began to speak, his words carefully chosen to project strength without aggression. As the negotiation progressed, Jake found himself drawing on uniquely human experiences. He spoke of Earth's history, of conflicts purposed and alliances forged. He appealed to universal concepts of mutual benefit and shared progress. The simulated aliens responded with threats and ultimatums, but Jake remained calm. He proposed innovative solutions, finding common ground where none seemed to exist. His human perspective allowed him to see possibilities that the rigid Norcadian diplomatic protocols had overlooked. As the simulation reached its climax, Jake made a bold proposal. He offered a cultural exchange program, suggesting that understanding would pave the way for lasting peace. The simulated aliens hesitated, then agreed. The holographic chamber faded away, revealing a room full of stunned Norcadian observers. Even the most critical among them couldn't deny the effectiveness of Jake's approach. As news of Jake's performance spread, the Norcadian capital erupted in a frenzy of debate. Crowds gathered in public squares, arguments breaking out between those who saw humans as valuable potential allies and those who viewed them as a threat. In the midst of the chaos, the High Council called an emergency session. Jake received a summons to address the council, an unprecedented honor for a non-Norcadian. As he prepared for this crucial moment, Jake received an urgent message from Earth. His blood ran cold as he read the contents. Increased military activity had been detected near human space, suggesting that some Norcadian factions were preparing for conflict regardless of the trial outcomes. Jake's mind raced. He had succeeded in the trials, but would it be enough to prevent war? As he made his way to the council chambers, he knew that his next words could determine the fate of both species. Beside him walked Odin, her face a mask of drive. She had been summoned by her superiors to explain her findings on human biology and defend her actions. Jake could see the conflict in her eyes, the choice between her career and her growing belief in human potential. As they approached the grand doors of the council chamber, Jake and Odin shared a look of understanding. Whatever happened next would change everything. The doors swung open and they stepped forward into an uncertain future, the fate of two worlds hanging in the balance. Balance. As the doors closed behind them, Jake and Odin found themselves in a small antechamber, a momentary reprieve before facing the High Council. "Jake," Odin whispered urgently, pulling him into a shadowy alcove. "We have a few minutes. We need to discuss strategy." Jake nodded, acutely aware of their proximity in the confined space. "What did you have in mind?" Odin's skin rippled with a mix of colors, betraying her nervous energy. "The Council will be looking for reasons to dismiss human potential. We need to present a united front, emphasizing the unique attributes your species brings to the table." As they spoke in hushed tones, their bodies drew closer. The air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken tension. Jake found his gaze drawn to the subtle patterns shifting across Odin's iridescent skin. Without conscious thought, he reached out, his fingers brushing against her arm. The contact sent a jolt through both of them. Odin's skin erupted in a dazzling display of colors, while Jake felt a tingling warmth spread from his fingertips throughout his body. Their eyes met, and in that moment all thoughts of strategy and diplomacy vanished. Jake leaned in, his lips meeting Odin's in a tentative kiss. The sensation was unlike anything he had ever experienced. Her skin was cool and smooth, with a faint electric charge that made his lips tingle. Odin responded with equal fervor, her hands exploring Jake's face and hair with curious intensity. As their embrace deepened, Jake became acutely aware of the alien nature of Odin's physiology. Her body temperature fluctuated, and he could feel a subtle vibration beneath her skin. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. Odin's skin glowed with a soft, pulsating light. "That was unexpected," she said, her voice a mix of wonder and scientific curiosity. Jake couldn't help but smile. Definitely not something covered in the diplomatic handbook. Their moment of intimacy was cut short by the sound of approaching footsteps. They quickly composed themselves, but the air between them had changed irrevocably. As they prepared to enter the council chamber, Jake felt a new sense of purpose. He wasn't just fighting for human-Norcadian relations anymore. He was fighting for a future where he and Odin could explore this newfound connection. The High Council chamber was a vast circular room, its high ceilings adorned with holographic displays of star systems and cosmic phenomena. Jake stood at the center, feeling the weight of countless alien eyes upon him. Taking a deep breath, he began his address. "Esteemed members of the High Council, I stand before you not just as a representative of Earth, but as a bridge between our two species." Jake's words flowed with a confidence born from his trials and his deepening connection with Odin. He spoke of human adaptability, citing his performance in the Norcadian tests. He highlighted human creativity, drawing parallels between Earth's artistic achievements and Norcadian cultural traditions. "Our species may seem vastly different," Jake continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber, "but our potential for collaboration is limitless. Humans have a unique ability to think outside established parameters, to find innovative solutions to complex problems." As Jake spoke, he noticed Odin step forward from her position among the scientific advisors. Her voice rang out, clear and steady. "If I may, honored council, I can corroborate Ambassador Rice's claims." A murmur rippled through the assembly. It was highly unusual for a lower-ranking official to speak unbidden in such proceedings. Odin pressed on, her skin flickering with dedication. "My research into human biology has revealed remarkable adaptability at the cellular level. Their neural plasticity allows for rapid learning and problem-solving in ways that complement our own strengths. Jake felt a surge of gratitude towards Odin, knowing the professional risk she was taking by speaking out. Their eyes met briefly across the chamber, an unspoken understanding passing between them. The council deliberated, their discussion a flurry of untranslatable Norcadian. Jake recognized Zarin among them, his face set in a scowl of disapproval. The military official's voice rose above the others, arguing passionately against closer ties with humans. Just as the debate reached a fever pitch, a piercing alarm cut through the chamber. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing a massive fleet of unknown ships approaching Norcadian space. The lead counselor's voice boomed over the chaos. "Emergency protocols activated. All military personnel report to your stations." In the ensuing confusion, Jake found himself pulled aside by a grim-faced Norcadian official. "Ambassador Rice, your presence is required in the war room. We need to contact Earth." As Jake was led away, he caught sight of Odin being summoned by her superiors. Their eyes met one last time before they were swept in opposite directions, the fate of both their species hanging in the balance. In the stark utilitarian war room, Jake found himself surrounded by Norcadian military officials. Holographic displays showed the approaching alien fleet in alarming detail. "We've received a transmission from the unknown vessels," a Norcadian communications officer announced. "They identify themselves as the Vexari." The message played, filling the room with a harsh, guttural language. As the translation filtered through, Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The Vexari demands were clear: immediate surrender or total annihilation. Jake's mind raced. He knew that Earth's military forces were no match for the Vexari fleet, and even the advanced Norcadian defenses seemed inadequate against this new threat. They needed a plan, something that would combine the strengths of both species. As he pondered their options, Jake noticed Odin enter the war room. She was quickly put to work coordinating communication between human and Norcadian forces. Despite the gravity of the situation, Jake couldn't help but feel a spark of hope at her presence. Together, they might just find a way to save both their worlds from the Vexari threat. But as alarms blared and officials scrambled to prepare their defenses, Jake knew that the real challenge was only beginning. Jake's eyes darted between the holographic displays, each one showcasing a different aspect of the impending Vexari threat. The harsh reality of their situation settled over the war room like a suffocating blanket. "We need to combine our strengths," Jake said, his voice cutting through the tense atmosphere. "Norcadian technology with human adaptability." Odin nodded, her skin pulsing with a mix of persistence and anxiety. "I agree. Our standard defense systems won't be enough against this level of firepower." For hours, Jake and Odin worked tirelessly alongside human and Norcadian engineers. They pored over schematics, argued over compatibility issues, and pushed the boundaries of what both species thought possible. The result was a hybrid defense system that integrated human tactical flexibility with the raw power of Norcadian weaponry. As the prototype came online, Jake felt a surge of hope. The system's effectiveness in simulations was unprecedented, showcasing the potential of human-Norcadian cooperation. Even the most skeptical officials couldn't deny the results. However, their progress was short-lived. Alarms blared through the command center, signaling a critical failure in their communication relay. "We've lost contact with the human fleet," a Norcadian technician shouted, his fingers flying over the holographic interface. Jake's brow furrowed. This wasn't a simple malfunction. It reeked of sabotage. His eyes met Tarek's across the room, and he saw the same suspicion mirrored in his supervisor's face. "Tarek, we need to investigate this," Jake said in a low voice. "This feels like more than just bad luck." As they delved into the system logs, a pattern emerged. Subtle changes, almost undetectable, had been made to the communication protocols. It was the work of someone with intimate knowledge of both human and Norcadian systems. "Zarin," Jake muttered, the pieces falling into place. "It has to be him." But proving it to the High Council would be another matter entirely. As Jake and Tarek gathered evidence, the Vexari fleet entered the Norcadian solar system. The sheer size of the alien armada made Jake's heart sink. Their original battle plans were woefully inadequate. In a flash of inspiration, Jake proposed a daring strategy. "We need to hit them where they're vulnerable," he explained to the assembled officials. "A small team could infiltrate their command ship while our main forces engage in a diversionary battle." The High Council deliberated, their faces etched with concern. Finally, they gave their reluctant approval. Jake volunteered to lead the infiltration team without hesitation. "I'm coming with you," Odin said, her voice leaving no room for argument. "My scientific expertise could be crucial to the mission's success." The council erupted into heated debate. Losing one of their top scientists was a risk they were hesitant to take. But as the discussion raged on, it became clear that the success of this mission hinged on human-Norcadian cooperation. With the council's blessing, Jake and Odin prepared for their perilous mission. As they donned their specialized infiltration suits, they found themselves alone in the equipment room. "Jake," Odin said softly, her skin shimmering with a kaleidoscope of emotions, "I need you to know something." He turned to her, his heart pounding. Without a word, Odin pulled him close, her cool lips meeting his in a passionate kiss. The world fell away as they clung to each other, the looming threat of battle making every touch, every breath more intense. When they finally parted, Jake saw a new depth of emotion in Odin's eyes. This wasn't just about saving their species anymore. It was about fighting for a future where they could explore this connection further. The infiltration team boarded their stealth ship, a sleek vessel designed to slip past Vexari defenses. As they approached the massive enemy command ship, Jake's adrenaline surged. Everything hinged on this moment. Suddenly, proximity alarms blared. "Unexpected defense grid," the Norcadian pilot shouted. "We can't use our planned entry point." Jake's mind raced. "Odin, can we reconfigure the shield harmonics to match their power signature?" Odin's fingers flew over the control panel. "It's possible, but we'll need to alter our approach vector drastically." Working in perfect sync, Jake and Odin guided the team through a series of complex maneuvers. Human intuition combined with Norcadian precision, allowing them to slip through a gap in the Vexari defenses. As they docked with the alien ship, reports flooded in from the main battle. The hybrid defense systems were holding, but the Vexari numbers were overwhelming. Time was running out. Jake led the team through the twisting corridors of the Vexari ship, Odin at his side. They fought through pockets of resistance, their mixed human-Norcadian tactics catching the aliens off guard. In the ship's data core, they struck gold. Odin decrypted files revealing critical weaknesses in Vexari technology. This information could turn the tide of the battle, if they could get it back to their forces. Jake made the hardest decision of his life. "Odin, take half the team and get this data back to our ships. I'll lead the rest to sabotage their main systems." Odin's skin flashed with concern. "Jake, the risk is necessary," he finished. "We both know it's the only way." As Odin's group fought their way back to the entry point, Jake led his team deeper into the heart of the Vexari ship. The aliens' strange biomechanical technology pulsed around them, growing more complex with each level they descended. Meanwhile, Odin's team encountered an unexpected obstacle, Zarin. The Norcadian official had secretly boarded their ship, intent on sabotaging the mission. "You've doomed us all with your human sympathies," Zarin snarled, raising a weapon. Odin's mind flashed to her training sessions with Jake. She feinted left, then dropped low, sweeping Zarin's legs out from under him. The move was pure human unpredictability, something Zarin never saw coming. As Odin subdued Zarin, securing him for later judgment, she felt a newfound respect for human ingenuity coursing through her. Deep in the Vexari ship, Jake's team reached the central power core. The alien technology hummed with otherworldly energy. Jake knew that sabotaging it could cripple the entire Vexari fleet, but it could also trap them here, with no hope of escape. As he looked at his team, human and Norcadian alike, Jake felt the weight of two civilizations on his shoulders. The fate of both species hung in the balance, dependent on the choice he was about to make. Jake's hand hovered over the alien controls, his decision crystallizing in his mind. Whatever the cost, he knew what he had to do. Jake's hand descended on the alien controls, his face tight with certainty. The fate of two civilizations rested on this moment, and he knew there was only one choice. Initiating core overload, he announced to his team. We have minutes at most. Move. As Jake's fingers danced across the unfamiliar interface, the Vexari ship's core began to pulse with an ominous red light. Alarms blared, their alien tones grating against human and Norcadian ears alike. Meanwhile, aboard the Allied flagship, Odin's voice crackled through the comm system. Intelligence upload complete. You have the Vexari weakness data. Admiral Cora, a seasoned Norcadian officer, nodded curtly. Acknowledged. All ships, reconfigure weapons to match the transmitted frequencies. Prepare for coordinated assault. The combined human-Norcadian fleet surged forward, their newly adjusted weapons tearing through the Vexari defenses with unprecedented efficiency. Massive alien ships, once seemingly impervious, now crumbled under the onslaught. Back on the Vexari command ship, Jake and his team raced through rapidly collapsing corridors. The ship's self-destruct sequence, triggered by their sabotage, was progressing faster than anticipated. We need to find an alternate route, Jake shouted over the cacophony of alarms and buckling metal. This way's blocked. As they navigated the maze-like interior, Jake's mind raced. Had Odin made it out safely? Was their sacrifice going to be enough? Across the battlefield, Odin stood on the bridge of her rescue vessel, her skin pulsing with a mix of willpower and fear. She had made her choice. She couldn't leave Jake behind. Set course for the Vexari command ship, she ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. Her pilot, a young Norcadian named Lyrax, looked at her in disbelief. But sir, that ship is about to... I'm well aware, Odin cut him off. Now execute the order. As their ship weaved through the debris-filled space, Odin's mind flashed back to her training sessions with Jake. His unorthodox human tactics had seemed so strange at first, but now... Evasive pattern Delta 7, she called out, using a maneuver Jake had shown her. The ship rolled and twisted, narrowly avoiding a massive piece of Vexari hull. Inside the failing command ship, Jake and his team found themselves cornered. A group of Vexari defenders, desperate and enraged, had them pinned down in a narrow corridor. We're out of options, Kira, a human engineer, yelled over the sound of energy weapons. Jake's eyes darted around, searching for anything they could use. His gaze fell on a panel of exposed circuitry. Cover me, he shouted, diving toward it. As his team laid down suppressing fire, Jake ripped into the alien technology. Sweat beaded on his brow as he spliced wires and rerouted power, praying his understanding of Vexari systems was good enough. Suddenly, the corridor filled with acrid smoke. The Vexari defenders fell back, coughing and disoriented. Go! Jake yelled, leading his team through the gap. They rounded a corner and found themselves face to face with Odin's rescue team. For a moment, time seemed to stand still as Jake and Odin locked eyes. Took you long enough, Jake quipped, a smile breaking through his exhausted features. Odin's skin rippled with relief and something deeper. I had to make a detour to drop off some garbage, she replied, thinking of the bound and unconscious Zarin in her ship's brig. Their moment of reunion was cut short by a violent tremor that shook the entire ship. We need to move, Odin said, all business once more. I have a plan. As they raced through the disintegrating vessel, Odin outlined her idea. There's a bank of Vexari escape pods 2 levels down. If we can reach them, we might just make it out alive, Jake finished, nodding in agreement. The combined team fought their way through waves of panicked Vexari, their human and Norcadian tactics blending seamlessly. Jake's intuitive decision-making complemented Odin's precise technical knowledge, allowing them to overcome obstacles that would have stopped either species alone. They reached the escape pod bay just as another explosion rocked the ship. Jake and Odin worked in tandem, quickly adapting the alien technology to accommodate their team. It's not pretty, but it'll fly, Odin announced, her fingers flying over the strange controls. That's good enough for me, Jake replied, helping the last of their team into the cramped pod. As the command ship began to break apart around them, Jake slammed his hand on the launch control. The escape pod shot out into space, narrowly avoiding a massive piece of debris. The pod's view screen filled with light as the Vexari command ship exploded, the shockwaves sending their small craft tumbling through space. Alarms blared as the pod's systems struggled to compensate. "We're losing stability," Odin shouted, her hands a blur over the controls. "Jake, I need you on the auxiliary systems." Without hesitation, Jake threw himself into the task. His human intuition allowed him to grasp the alien technology in ways that surprised even Odin. Together, they managed to stabilize the pod's erratic flight path. As the chaos of their escape subsided, the team watched in awe as the battlefield transformed before them. The destruction of the Vexari command ship had crippled the alien fleet. The human Norcadian alliance, armed with the intelligence Odin had provided, pressed their advantage ruthlessly. Jake activated the pod's communication system, broadcasting on all frequencies. "This is Ambassador Rice. We're alive and in need of pickup." As they waited for rescue, Jake and Odin found themselves sitting side by side, exhausted but alive. Their hands found each other, fingers intertwining in a gesture that bridged the gap between their species. "We did it," Jake said softly, his voice filled with wonder and relief. Odin's skin shimmered with a complex mix of emotions. "Yes," she replied, her eyes meeting his. "But something tells me our work is just beginning." As Allied ships approached to retrieve them, Jake and Odin knew that the victory they had achieved was only the first step. The real challenge, forging a lasting alliance between their peoples, still lay ahead. But in that moment, as they drifted among the stars, they allowed themselves to hope for a future where humans and Norcadians could stand together as equals. Equals. The future held challenges, but together they felt ready to face them. As their rescue ship docked with the Allied flagship, Jake and Odin were greeted with a hero's welcome. Cheers erupted from the assembled crowd of humans and Norcadians, their voices blending into a cacophony of celebration. Admiral Cora stepped forward, her typically stoic expression softened by a hint of pride. "Ambassador Rice, Lieutenant Odin," she said, inclining her head, "your actions have secured us a momentous victory, but I'm afraid our work is far from finished." Jake nodded, his exhaustion momentarily forgotten. "The real challenge begins now, doesn't it?" "Indeed," Cora replied. "We must forge a lasting alliance between our peoples. The High Council has requested your presence at the negotiations." As they made their way to the conference room, Jake couldn't help but notice the mix of curiosity and wariness in the eyes of both humans and Norcadians they passed. The euphoria of victory was already giving way to uncertainty about the future. The negotiations began in earnest, with Jake and Odin at the center of intense discussions. Days turned into weeks as they worked tirelessly to bridge the gap between their species. Progress was slow but steady until a familiar face entered the fray. Zarin, newly released from custody, strode into the council chamber, his eyes burning with scarcely controlled fury. "Esteemed members of the High Council," he began, his voice dripping with false sincerity, "I come before you with grave concerns about this proposed alliance." Jake felt Odin tense beside him as Zarin activated a holographic display. The image showed Jake during his initial trials, but something was off. The footage had been expertly manipulated, portraying Jake's actions in a sinister light. "Is this the kind of species we wish to align ourselves with?" Zarin asked, his voice rising. "Deceitful, manipulative, willing to say or do anything to achieve their goals?" Murmurs of discontent rippled through the assembly. Jake watched in dismay as the carefully built foundation of trust began to crumble. That evening, Jake paced in his quarters, his mind racing. "We need to counter this propaganda," he said, turning to Odin. "If we don't act quickly, everything we've fought for could be lost." Odin's skin rippled with concern. "What do you propose?" Jake's eyes lit up with sudden inspiration. "A public demonstration. We show them firsthand what humans and Norcadians can achieve together." The High Council reluctantly agreed to Jake's plan, seeing it as a last resort to salvage the deteriorating situation. As preparations began, Jake threw himself into the work, determined to make the demonstration a success. Meanwhile, Odin faced challenges of her own. Her fellow scientists, intrigued by her close work with humans, began pressing her for details about her research. "Your findings on human physiology could be groundbreaking," her colleague, Dr. Vex, insisted, "particularly the reproductive aspects. Think of the potential applications." Odin felt a knot of unease form in her core. She knew the data she possessed could be used to further understanding between their species, but in the wrong hands, it could also be weaponized. The ethical implications burdened immensely on her. As the day of the demonstration approached, Jake received an urgent transmission from Earth. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the screen, his expression grim. "Jake, we've picked up chatter suggesting Vexari activity in the Omega sector," Chen reported. "It looks like they're regrouping, possibly planning a retaliatory strike." Jake's blood ran cold. The threat of Vexari resurgence added a new layer of urgency to the alliance negotiations. He knew he had to convince both humans and Norcadians of the necessity of a unified front. But with Zaren's propaganda campaign in full swing, it wouldn't be easy. The day of the demonstration arrived, tension thick in the air. Jake and Odin led a mixed team of humans and Norcadians onto the specially designed course, aware of the billions watching across both worlds. As they navigated through a series of challenges, Jake felt a surge of pride. Despite their differences, the team moved with surprising cohesion, each species' strengths complementing the other's weaknesses. Halfway through the course, disaster struck. A section of the environmental hazard simulation malfunctioned, sending a shower of debris raining down on the team. Jake pushed a Norcadian teammate out of harm's way, but caught a glancing blow to his shoulder in the process. Pain exploded through his arm, and Jake stumbled, his vision blurring. He felt cool hands steadying him, and looked up to see Odin's concerned face. Without hesitation, Odin applied her knowledge of human physiology, quickly assessing and treating Jake's injury. The moment, captured by hovering camera drones, was broadcast across both worlds. As they pushed through the final challenges, Jake noticed a shift in the team's dynamics. The near miss had brought them closer, fostering a sense of trust and camaraderie that transcended species. The grand finale loomed before them, a simulated joint mission against a mock Vexari attack. As they entered the simulation chamber, Jake's instincts screamed that something was wrong. His suspicions were confirmed when the simulated Vexari ships began moving in patterns that were decidedly un-Vexari-like. "It's been sabotaged," he called out to Odin. "Zaren?" Odin's skin flashed with anger and tenacity. "Most likely. We need to adapt, quickly." Together they rallied their team, turning the sabotage attempt into a powerful demonstration of human Norcadian cooperation. As they expertly countered the unexpected challenges, Jake made sure to highlight Zaren's interference, exposing the depth of his deception to the watching billions. As the simulation concluded, a deafening cheer erupted from the audience. Jake and Odin found themselves at the center of a celebrating crowd, the barriers between human and Norcadian seeming to melt away in the face of their shared triumph. In the aftermath of the demonstration, public opinion swung dramatically in favor of the alliance. The High Council, buoyed by the positive response, fast-tracked the negotiations. Jake and Odin stood before the council, hands clasped tightly together, as Admiral Cora addressed them. "In light of your exceptional service and the potential Vexari threat, we propose the creation of a joint human-Norcadian task force," she announced, "and we would like you both to lead it." Jake felt a mix of excitement and apprehension wash over him. He glanced at Odin, seeing his own complex emotions reflected in the shimmer of her skin. As they left the council chamber, Jake pulled Odin aside. "This is a huge opportunity," he said softly, "but it's also a massive commitment. We need to think carefully about what it means for us, for our future." Odin nodded, her fingers intertwining with Jake's. "There's so much to consider," she replied. "The physiological challenges alone." Jake smiled, despite the weight of the decision before them. "We've faced impossible odds before," he said. "Whatever we decide, we'll face it together." As they walked towards an uncertain future, Jake and Odin knew that their choices in the coming days would shape not only their personal lives, but the destiny of human-Norcadian relations and the safety of both species. The path ahead was fraught with challenges, but for the first time, neither of them felt alone in facing them. As they walked towards an uncertain future, Jake and Odin found themselves summoned to a crucial meeting with the High Council and Earth's diplomatic team. The alliance negotiations had reached their final stages, and the weight of the moment pressed upon them. Before entering the chambers, Jake pulled Odin aside, his eyes searching hers. "Whatever happens in there," he said softly, "we're in this together." Odin's skin rippled with a mix of affection and willpower. "Always," she replied, squeezing his hand. "Our vision for the future is worth fighting for." They shared a brief, tender moment, drawing strength from each other before stepping into the council chambers. The room buzzed with anticipation as both human and Norcadian leaders presented the finalized treaty for ratification. Jake carefully reviewed the document, his brow furrowing as he noticed several clauses that raised red flags. He leaned towards Odin, whispering, "These terms could severely limit human technological advancement." Odin nodded, her eyes scanning the text. "You're right. We can't let this pass unchallenged." Taking a deep breath, Jake stood, addressing the assembly. "Esteemed council members, I have concerns about certain aspects of this treaty." A hush fell over the room as Jake outlined the problematic clauses, explaining their potential long-term implications for human progress. His words sparked a heated debate, with some council members arguing for caution, while others insisted on maintaining their technological edge. Sensing the growing tension, Odin rose to her feet. "If I may," she began, her voice steady and clear. "As a scientist who has worked closely with humans, I can attest to the benefits of unrestricted technological exchange." She activated a holographic display, presenting data from her research. "Our combined knowledge could accelerate advancements in medicine, energy production, and space exploration. More importantly, it could be crucial in preparing for future Vexari threats." Odin's impassioned argument, backed by solid evidence, swayed several council members. Jake watched with pride as she navigated the complex political landscape, her understanding of both species proving invaluable. As the discussions intensified, an urgent transmission cut through the debate. Admiral Kora's face appeared on the main screen, her expression grim. "Long-range sensors have detected a massive Vexari fleet approaching our borders. They'll be here within days." The room erupted into chaos as the implications sank in. The Vexari had regrouped far faster than anyone had anticipated, and now they were poised to strike before the alliance could be formalized. Jake's mind raced, formulating a plan. He stepped forward, his voice cutting through the panic. "We need to act now. I propose we assemble a joint human Norcadian strike force to meet the Vexari head-on." Silence fell as all eyes turned to him. Jake continued, his voice growing stronger with conviction. "This is our chance to demonstrate the strength of our alliance before they reach populated systems. We fight together, or we fall separately." The council members exchanged glances, weighing the audacity of Jake's proposal against the dire alternative. After a tense moment, Admiral Kora nodded. "It's risky, but it might be our only chance. I support Ambassador Rice's plan." With time of the essence, the council swiftly approved the operation. Jake and Odin found themselves thrust into leadership roles, tasked with assembling and coordinating the hastily formed fleet. As they worked tirelessly to prepare for the impending battle, Odin pulled Jake aside, her skin shimmering with excitement. "Jake, I need to show you something," she said, leading him to her makeshift lab. Inside, holographic displays flickered with complex genetic models. "I've had a breakthrough," Odin explained, her voice tinged with awe. "I've found a way to enhance human Norcadian genetic compatibility. Theoretically, it could allow us to have children together." Jake stared at the displays, the implications of Odin's discovery sinking in. It wasn't just about them, it represented the potential for true unity between their species. He turned to Odin, his eyes brimming with emotion. "This changes everything," he said softly, pulling her into an embrace. Their moment of joy was cut short by the blaring of alarms. The Vexari fleet had been spotted entering the system. It was time. Jake and Odin made their way to the bridge of the flagship, a hybrid vessel that showcased the best of both human and Norcadian technology. As they took their positions, Jake felt a surge of pride looking at the mixed crew around him. "All ships, report in," Jake commanded, his voice steady despite the tension coursing through him. As the fleet acknowledged their readiness, Odin's fingers flew over the tactical display. "Vexari ships entering weapons range in 3 minutes," she announced. Jake nodded, addressing the fleet. "Remember your training. Trust in each other. Today we fight not just for our individual worlds, but for the future we will build together." The space before them lit up as the Vexari Armada dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Jake's eyes widened at the sheer number of enemy ships. This would be the fight of their lives. "All ships, execute Maneuver Gamma 3, Jake ordered, setting their plan into motion. The human Norcadian fleet moved as one, their formation tightening as they engaged the enemy. The battle erupted in a dazzling display of weapons fire and tactical maneuvers. Jake's innovative strategies, combined with Odin's technical expertise, kept the Allied fleet one step ahead of the Vexari. As the conflict raged, Jake and Odin worked in perfect synchronization, anticipating each other's needs and complementing each other's strengths. Their flagship became the linchpin of the Allied defense, coordinating attacks and providing support where needed. Suddenly, a massive energy surge rocked their ship. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks as the lights flickered ominously. "Direct hit to our main power core," an officer shouted over the chaos. "We're losing systems across the board." Jake locked eyes with Odin, a silent understanding passing between them. Without a word, they sprang into action, working furiously to reroute power and stabilize the failing systems. As Jake's hands flew over the unfamiliar Norcadian controls, he marveled at how naturally they came to him now. Odin's training had paid off in ways he could never have imagined. With a final push, they managed to restore partial power. "Helm, execute evasive pattern Delta 9, Jake commanded, his mind already formulating their next move. The damaged flagship rolled and pitched, narrowly avoiding a barrage of Vexari fire. As they came about, Jake saw an opening in the enemy formation. "There's our chance," he said to Odin, pointing at the tactical display. "If we can punch through there, we can split their fleet in two." Odin nodded, her skin pulsing with purpose. "It's risky, but it might work. I'll reconfigure our shields to withstand the assault." Jake opened a channel to the fleet. "All ships, form up on us. We're going to break their line." As the Allied vessels fell into formation behind them, Jake and Odin shared a look of tenacity. Whatever came next, they would face it together, united in their vision for a shared future. The damaged flagship surged forward, leading the charge into the heart of the Vexari Armada. As energy weapons lit up the void around them, Jake and Odin stood side by side, ready to write the next chapter in their epic journey.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.